some technology in there.
I do, I just downloaded this app, and it records, but as you type, it connects the audio with the notes, so that you can go back and listen. We'll see how it works. Yeah, I might post it.
All right, I still need Pat. Does anyone see Pat? He's on.
We're all stopped out there.
Yes. It turns out it started at breakfast. Yeah. While we're waiting on Pat, if you're a bicyclist, free breakfast tomorrow is at University Heights. Sponsored by University Heights and Jeff's Bike Shop. So stop by University Heights tomorrow for your breakfast for Bike to Work Week. And then I don't think there's free breakfast on Thursday, but Friday at lunch, you can get free lunch at 30th Century. So after you've eaten all the free food of Bike to Work Week, you'll have to bike. All right, we are back in session. Thanks, everyone. We also included in this agenda, it's Justice Center, and it was just meant to kind of wrap up last week and then kind of brainstorm some ideas of where do we go next. We also included other space and storage needs. I just throw out a couple of things that are on our radar. This building we're in is about 30, I can't calculate, 30-some years old. And its roof and air conditioning are in need of repairs. We had a fire at Secondary Roads, and we have a building that is, well, virtually totaled. It can be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt at the same square footage and size that it was, which was almost a 50-year-old building, and so that will take a significant amount of money to upgrade it to what our current needs are. And we've also been addressing regular storage space. The last couple of years, there's been a proposal to add on 3 more garage spaces to the back of the seats building for storage and seats needs. And the board had decided not to spend that money awaiting the Justice Center votes. And then we have a medical examiner that is stealing space from the treasurer and has talk about hodgepodge. They have space in the treasurer's office, they have space in 3rd story, and they have to store their vehicles in the parking ramp, and sometimes their vehicles do medical examiner business. So, and then we have a ambulance department that is in an old building over here, and they're busting at the seams, and we are approaching crisis in that because you can no longer get what I call short ambulances. I don't think Steve's in the room anymore. Ambulances now are taller, and we are buying our first tall ambulance this year. It will be housed in Coralville. We're not scheduled to buy an ambulance next year, and by the 3rd year out, we will have a tall ambulance and we'll have nowhere to house it downtown. So those are the rest of, in general, I mean, there's always storage and space needs that are of a lot smaller dollar amount. Those are the rest of the things the board is facing in the next couple of years. If I've missed something, feel free to jump in. So where would the board like to go on this Justice Center and bond referendum and space and storage needs? A work session of the board.
Well, we do have a list of identified needs that went beyond our courthouse and Justice Center and jail. And it did include, again, a conversation of if we have a burned out building that needs immediate attention, how much opportunity should we take advantage of that and move more things out to that? More storage, or
Needs, it was created by Terrence and the Space Needs Committee
Last year.
last year. It's in need of updating, but we were waiting the Justice Center because that would change the list. And it doesn't account for the fact that we had a major fire. Just to update people on the fire, we expect insurance to pay somewhere around $1 million. It could go as high as 1.2. When we initially did Space Needs last week, we were at a building that could cost as much as 3.8 million to 4.2. I'm a little confused. We were trying to crunch that down a little bit more, but the big question the board faces is, do you put $1 million in a building that is not adequate? We can't even actually fit our equipment in that building. Building's over 50 years old. Do you put $1 million in the building, or do you just level it and then rebuild the space that we actually need?
It should be pointed out too, and I had a nice conversation with our auditor, Travis Whiteford, about that building that burned down is a hodgepodge of different years of additions. It's part of the idea, again, when we looked at the second round of the Justice Center, was at least keep the building envelope, even if you reduce all the things in there, you still have one building. That secondary roads building that burned down was it 3 pieces or 4 pieces? Four different pieces at 4 different times, additions, and you start having hodgepodge because it's built, some's built, 60 years ago, and then there's the 30-year one, and then there's the, and so now, you could tell from the fire structure that was not advantageous whatsoever, and I'm sure for facilities folks, they do not like the idea of trying to heat and then put an additional heat, electrical system, and all of those other expenses that come in, so just something to keep in mind, you'd not just try to build an envelope at least for some of our storage needs out there.
Plus address fleet management, centralizing fleet management, and what we expect to be a 24-hour ambulance operation at secondary roads in the next couple of years. Currently, ambulance only operates out of there on the weekends. Steve Spindler is our ambulance director and has indicated that even though the population is growing, he would be unlikely to recommend more ambulances be stored downtown. And it's just about response time. So currently we have normally 2 crews on staff downtown and 1 crew on staff in Coralville near the Oakdale campus. And on the weekends, a 4th crew at secondary roads. We expect secondary roads will go to full-time in the next 2 to 3 years. So, and they are kind of hodgepodged in there right now. So, in discussing our secondary roads issue, which I don't think you can talk about the Justice Center issues without talking about all of this at once, if we're going to not go forward with any sort of bond referendum, because all of them are coming due. And so that's kind of where we are. Andy's brought up a list. The ambulance medical examiner said $750,000. That was just for the schematics and to begin to pay the architects. That was not the actual construction cost.
Yeah, I think that it could have also included some demolition, that kind of thing, of existing property.
Of existing property, yeah. So this list will get updated in the near future by the Space Needs Committee with everything involved that we're talking about. But the board kind of needs to give some direction.
Well, it's healthy, I think, to pull this list out as we start to, after hearing some, obviously, comments, and we start to all generate different ideas again. This list needs to be a part of the conversation too, particularly as we look at some of the potential for storage. Should we build additional storage now while we have the ability to do so out there while we're building for secondary roads anyway, or not? Might be a good time to be talking about that. And again, we know we have that immediate need on the plate as well.
So Janet and Lonnie weren't actually here because it was secondary roads and, we didn't drag you over here, but it's not unrelated because the board had talked about, do we move vehicles out and create more storage at secondary roads. It came up, down the road, there will be some developer who wants our storage unit, that Lonnie and courts have a lot of our storage buildings south of the jail. Can that go to the port, or can that go to secondary roads? And just so you know, Pat was defending you, Lonnie, that it needed to be closer, but this is all on the table. Here's the list, and I guess we kind of need to know from everyone, both with the Justice Center and all the other space needs, what kind of information, what kind of data, what kind of estimates are you interested in getting as we begin to create a space needs plan for 5 to 10 years?
I don't think we have enough time.
Well, we're not gonna do it today, but I mean, we'll do this in work sessions in the next couple of months. I guess we just need to decide what you need in order to have the next work session. I mean, to begin to formulate
I
opinions.
really think our priority is get the fire issue taken care of, that building out there, that's, the east portion of that could be restored some, but is totally, handicap inaccessible, there's too many different levels, and that portion needs to come off, and whatever we're gonna do from there on, but I think that's one, in order to keep maintenance going and keep our trucks going and so forth, that one has to be done. And to me, it all comes down to wants and needs, and our needs are way surpassing our wants. I've said all those wants aside, and I think the things we need to address now are the court services, the fire out there, and the just jail. And quite frankly, I'm to the point where I would almost support minimum security at our facility at the jail right now, and ship those that are going to be there any length of time, and work on our court system, get that updated with victim services.
So you would increase, to address a lot of the space issues within the existing jail, you would ship more prisoners out, maintain that more as
I think we will.
as a minimum security, and there's just a holding facility for those who are going to
For
be
short
short.
term, that's right.
And there,
And the reason being,
They all
we're gonna
pretty
pour all
much
that
get
money in
shipped.
there, and still have not enough space for every, so I would say, ship home prisoners and put an addition onto the courthouse on the south side, or either side, west side, and address the courtrooms and court space, and move on from there.
So just put like, so to put a building, your suggestion is put a building onto the side of the
A permanent
courthouse.
building.
Permanent building on the side of the courthouse that would have at least a couple courtrooms.
Courtrooms,
Secure entranceway.
space, the clerk of court, all of that.
Of course,
If we don't have any more space in the court system or anything like that, we don't have any room to do any of our,
But you're okay.
any of our jail alternatives, and we're just throwing them out the window if we don't do something, because we just don't have room to do anything.
So if I understand, Pat, in order to get to somewhere you're comfortable, we need to know what a courthouse addition will cost.
And
And we
space
need-
needed and what we would,
And we need to know what a jail minimum would cost, and then anybody that's higher security wouldn't ever be stored here. Or
well,
not-
at some
or
point
housed
it would,
here,
but
not stored.
not until the
Sorry.
court system.
Would never be housed here. And I mean, the minimum jail repairs to house only minimum security. I mean, the locking system, 1.6 million. Minimum security, you still have to have a locking system? I mean, these are the questions we'd have to know.
minimum, yes. We don't have the ability to do a lot of classification because of the facility as it is, and if we make the decision that we're gonna make that move, then that would give us some additional flexibility on classifications and I consider minimum are the people that are sentenced, and that population isn't the population that has given us over
the voters, it would be touch and go whether we'd have enough cash to repair the jail without going to the voters. Not that I'm afraid to go to the voters to repair the jail, it's just, it's another referendum. But if you know, it's possible we could come up with a capital to do it without bonding. But I'll tell you, that's illogical because TIFs don't pay into regular taxes, they only pay into bonded taxes.
Well, and the needs are, I mean, I don't know, at some point, it's like, you really spend $2 million when your needs are 25 million, I just don't know.
But so I get what Pat's looking for. If you only did the courthouse addition, and we did minimum repairs of the jail, and we housed more inmates out of the county, some sort of cost estimate on that. And, I mean, obviously, we don't know the answer to that, but in order to make a decision in that way, we would need that
But we
data.
know it's at least 70% of what the cost was going to be.
Well, that's if you want to address 15 to 20 years, 10 to 15 years.
Well, the court system would go free.
So as you guys talk about this, doing an attachment to the courthouse, are we writing off completely ever having the hopes of having the sheriff's office and jail and courthouse together? I mean, the biggest reason I know we haven't gotten the 60%, but we've gotten the majority each time. So, but the biggest reason to have the two of them together was an efficiency and security type of situation where you're not transporting inmates, you're being able to, go through secure hallways and things like that. So if we're writing off that whole thing, I'm just curious, because I'd just be curious where the board members are at as far as, do you believe that's the most efficient way to have them consolidated or no?
Obviously not. The board voted 5-0 to put forward this referendum twice. Now, one of the supervisors is not here. So the board clearly thought the best plan we had, we already put to the voters twice. But now we're brainstorming other options we have. And think about, if you think about a courthouse annex, the original design was designed, that we put to the voters twice, was designed that 25 or 30 years from now would be another wing, okay? If you go with the courthouse annex first, you might be building phase 2 first. And you would leave for another vote of the public some other day, a unified court and jail system. But if, you could be building what is wing 2 first, and then leaving the space for the original building still there.
But wing 2 couldn't have 2/3, it won't fit. But I mean, if you're just talking about adding some additional space, a couple of courtrooms,
But
secure entrance.
they have said they
I'm
would
supportive
vacate
of
the
that,
road
right?
to us.
Well, the public did support it because,
Majority did.
yeah.
Well, so are we talking, so what's been sort of kicked around is, well, a couple of ideas been kicked around, the temporary rooms out in front, or on the east side of the courthouse for office space, or an annex that comes in through what is now the break room on the south side, and you build something there, and if you do that, then you have that potential of building a secure entrance and doing the security thing. But once you start adding on to different spots, then there were a lot of people that were concerned about making the iconic courthouse convoluted, and they didn't want, this big structure.
Can people
blocking
shut
it.
off their ringers and this is a work session of the board still?
So that's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, if we do that annex to the south, does that make it so we get past the point of no return where we can never come back and sort of have a consolidated justice center?
Well, if it depends on the size and scope of whatever this phase 2 idea is out there, and that is, if you put a structure that was on the south side of the courthouse, maybe match it up to where, the little road is and the park it's just, that part of it is just some additional courtrooms and secure entranceway.
Then to me, if you do that, to me, that's like a Band-Aid, you're not
This is
addressing
all
the
a
problem.
Band-Aid right
You're
now.
not addressing the problem.
We tried to avoid the Band-Aid by
You know-
putting something out there for the public, and 50% of the people twice said yes, but not 60%
Well,
to
and
pay
would it,
for it.
and would it still be your priority to go ahead and vacate the street then as well? Because you're gonna affect that,
I think if we
Drive
were
around.
going to do this, the street would have to be vacated. I mean, because there's not enough room to the south to do it without vacating the street. And, I mean, the city has said, I mean, they've indicated we can vacate the street whenever we want it, so.
yeah, because I have concerns, I wanna make sure that, because doing this, I'm not an architect, so I really can't envision this, but I still wanna envision having a method of getting people with disabilities close to the door, so that they can come in and things like that. And if we have that on the south side and we take that parking and that circle drive around, we still need a way to make it accessible. And that was planned for in the Justice Center, but,
And
that's
again,
long
we
gone.
never talked about a south side structure because we didn't want to obstruct the
Right.
facade of the front of the courthouse. Well, again,
Right.
everything's, after last Tuesday, everything is, we start over.
Mhm.
That's where we are.
I got from Pat some data or information that he's interested in knowing. Does anybody else have data or information they're interested in knowing before, obviously this will be a many-month process
Sure.
of rethinking where we are, but
Yeah, I guess.
we're not deciding anything.
No, as far as throwing things on the table, I would want to know what the cost associated with immediate needs of the courthouse, which would include the cost of the boilers, ADA compliance, and a secure entranceway. And that's it for the courthouse.
Boiler, ADA, secure entrance, but no more courtroom space, no more
At
office.
this point, we're just talking about
That's fine.
immediate needs.
I just wanted to make sure I
And
got it.
okay. And then for the jail, I would want to look at the immediate priorities, which sounds like the entire lock system needs to be replaced. The control center and the wiring system, and that is at $1.6 to $2 million, is what I've been hearing.
Any repairs while we have inmates gone?
I think that would have to just be assessed, obviously. I mean, if there's.
Minor repairs?
Sure, I mean, there was some talk about, obviously, if there's a piping situation, I know we did some investment into the piping after the one burst on to the offices. By the way, that's, you can imagine that problem.
Yeah, the raw sewage that went into
Yeah, the raw sewage
staff
all over.
members' desks, that was pleasant.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of, I look at what are the immediate needs. And then I would also look at costs associated with transporting more prisoners out. That the current system with the amount of prisoners we have in there is not acceptable. That's too much danger for our employees, it's too much danger for our inmates. So let's look at.
Lower the population?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
The other thing
things
I'd add to
I-
that, that Terrence was talking about, that same piping is under the present jail. And it's a quality that was inferior and it's deteriorated to the point where that's probably going to have to be addressed as well at some point.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that building is on a sinkhole. We saw part of the whole parking lot fall in. Yeah. But this is what we have.
Does anybody else have stuff? I have John's list from earlier.
Yeah, I got a couple things, I guess. One is, I think somebody should be checking with the GSA about availability of space and what it would cost to rent.
At the post office building.
Yeah.
I've talked to them, so
Um,
they're getting me something.
Yeah, that's good.
Then we probably should try to do the same thing. I'm not even sure if that building immediately to the north of the courthouse is scheduled to be demolished. I mean, it's only 4 or 5 years old.
Where the music school is?
Yeah.
Okay, where they moved in. Or
Yeah,
some-
but to find out
Okay.
what the plan is for that building and if there is availability, what rental space would be there. The other thing is somebody should check with the school district in find out where they get temporary buildings and what they cost,
And then,
how to find them.
and then see if we are allowed to put pods up.
If I was city, you would allow it in code.
City ordinances, okay.
I guess that's my list.
You can revise and extend every time we meet. Anyone else? Janet, Lonnie, you have things you wanna know other than